Hey everybody, hey fellow YouTubers, hello other survivors of this non-consensual human experimentation or targeted individuals. It's about 5:40 p.m. Central Time on August 21st, 2018, and I just wanted to make a video going through connecting some dots. It may be a little bit hodgepodgey, a little bit of information from here, a little bit of information from there. But I started the video a while ago, and immediately my dog ran to the door, and she has explosive diarrhea. So make your own conclusions about that, but that happens when when I have anything important and they can't seem to tear me enough down with the torture, they attack my dog, and I think that I will just go ahead and say it sounds crazy, but I think that they remote neural manipulate my dog to give her, because they can do that to me, to mess with my bowels or to mess with my bladder, and I believe they do that to my dog whenever I'm trying to do something important. So I had to actually stop the video and bring her out. I may just have to go ahead and buy an editing program. I had an editing program before, but then I had to get my computer fixed, and it somehow just disappeared when I got it fixed. I wanted to start out today, and this isn't an excuse. I'm going to get through, some documentation and go over some information as best that I can. But I just want to show y'all kind of how I feel today in a metaphorical sense. I know, and I guess I can talk about that later on. It depends on how much time I have, but I had an appointment on Monday with my new psychiatrist, because I go to basically a place where psychiatrists are about to enter into their own careers, and it's like on their last stop. And so I've switched 3 times. And what was I gonna say about that? And I was kind of trying to explain how it feels to be attacked with this stuff, how my body feels, and how tired it is. And I feel like this visual right here that I'm going to show y'all kind of explains it, and a lot of other target individuals will understand. This is how I feel under my skin, like around my head and my shoulders and my chest right now. This right here. That's how I feel. Of course, then Wolverine starts healing up from that, and that's what I think we all try and do when they're hitting us with stuff. We try and keep healing. I just kind of wanted to show that, and it's not an excuse or anything like that. I just kind of wanted to let y'all know that's kind of a metaphor for how my body feels today underneath. All my nerves and muscles feel just mutilated and burned underneath. So I thought it was a good metaphor. Okay, so I wanted to go through first this great article that if you go to the conference calls, you may know her, Feather. She sent me this article because we were talking about this last night. We were talking about kind of not a law, but almost like a national security addendum on non-consensual human experimentation, which there is a I don't know what to call it, because it's not a law, but it's an addendum that if you don't have to get consent from the person that you're doing experimentation on, even if they're an innocent American. You don't have to get consent as long as it's for scientific purposes or for national security purposes. Now that goes against the Constitution. That goes against all of our regular laws. It goes against the Geneva Convention, which I'll kind of relate this to in a second. But I do want to go through this article and just kind of show y'all the process of kind of how the American people were tricked to think that everything was being fixed and nobody could do non-consensual experimentation around the time that Clinton was in office, and how that was really just a lie, and they never got They never got those regulations into place before he left office, and then the regulations for conformed consent still are not there today. Still are not there today. So it's kind of this loophole, not a real law, but something that it's like a national security rule or addendum that these people in a time of war, our military industrial complex, our agencies can do non-consensual experimentation. Well, I'll talk about my personal, oh gosh, words are very hard right now. But my personal kind of, I guess, antidote about that, about my attackers and what they say to me on V2K after I read this article. But it's called, the article is Outlaw Non-Consensual Human Experimentation. It's by Cheryl Welsh, which we should all, know that name. June 16, 2009. I'm going to check to see if, okay. Okay, and it's from the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists. About 15 years ago, a reporter at the Albuquerque Tribune discovered evidence that during the Cold War, the U.S. government carried out radiation experiments on U.S. citizens without their knowledge or consent, all under the shadow of classified research. When the story hit the news wires, the U.S. public was outraged. About 15 years ago, a reporter at the Albuquerque Tribune discovered evidence that during the Cold War, the U.S. government carried out radiation experiments on U.S. citizens without their knowledge or consent, all under the shadow of classified research. When the story hit the news wires, the U.S. public was outraged. President Bill Clinton responded by establishing the Advisory Committee on Human Radiation Experiments, or ACHRE, calling on it to review Washington's past actions and recommend steps that would prevent such heinous human experiments from ever taking place again. The committee made their recommendations in a 1995 report, and although Clinton issued a memorandum 2 years later that included several ACHRE prescriptions, bureaucratic delays kept it from being properly approved before he left office. The Department of Health and Human Services finally published it as an interim proposal in the Federal Register in 2002, a proposal in the Federal Register in 2002, but it remains unapproved by the appropriate agencies and departments. So there was a lot of stuff in the news about him kind of having this advisory committee on human radiation experiments, and the whole, him apologizing for MK Ultra, but then real legislation never got approved. Only they had advisories and memorandums and stuff like that, but nothing real was ever set into place. So while it seems crazy, it's true. Today, in a country that for the last 8 years has been defined by questionable intelligence gathering techniques and interrogation methods, the U.S. government is no more restricted in carrying out non-consensual classified research on human subjects than it was after World War II. This is in 2009, and still in 2018 that could be said, that the U.S. government is no more restricted in carrying out non-consensual classified research on human subjects than it was after World War II. That is scary. That's scary for non-target individuals and target individuals. Thus, it's time for the Obama administration to re-examine the guidelines for classified experimentation on human subjects and close any loopholes that would allow a person to be unknowingly subject to experimentation, which all targeted individuals are. We do figure out that something's going on with us and we're being hit with stuff, but we don't, and a lot of target individuals do not even know they're being hit. My father does not know that he's being experimented on. In fact, a prohibition on waiving informed consent in classified human subject experiments should be the centerpiece of any new legislation. The waiver of this right being perhaps the most offensive aspect of the Cold War research programs. So this is important, guys, and this is important in the kind of context that some target individuals say, hey, the experimentation is over and they're just killing us, they're just torturing us. This is important. It's important to know these loopholes and these kind of underground guidelines that are not showed on the mainstream media, how these people are justifying what they're doing to us with directed energy weapons, with microbiological agents, with nanoparticulates, nanotechnology. This is very important, because it's important to, when we discuss this with people who don't know anything about it, to say, yes, we are being experimented on. This is non-consensual human experimentation. Now, surrounding that non-consensual human experimentation, there's lots of other crimes. There's insurance fraud, there's human trafficking, sex trafficking, lots of other things, lots of other corrupt things around it. But this is kind of the centerpiece of how they feel they are justified in doing this and sacrificing innocent American citizens to protect innocent American citizens with with the military, which is an oxymoron. They're going to sacrifice innocent American families to protect innocent American families. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. None of this makes sense. It's all a delusion, an illusion, and a lie, so that they can get away with doing whatever they want to people, when they want to people. When I say they, I mean like our military-industrial complex, our intelligence agencies, agencies that like DARPA and in the Pentagon and things like that, in the Department of Defense. Currently, the 1991 Federal Policy for the Protection of Human Subjects is the binding regulation on human subject research for 17 federal agencies, including the military and intelligence agencies. Although it outlines the guidelines for informed consent, it also states, unless otherwise required by law, department or agency heads may waive the applicability of some or all of the provisions of this policy. Unless otherwise required by law, department or agency heads may waive the applicability of some or all of the provisions of this policy. In other words, a person participating in an experiment must be informed and give his consent unless a high-level government official doesn't think it is necessary. Not surprisingly, this authority does not stop with the heads of agencies and departments. The President also has the power to waive or modify these provisions through a presidential directive, probably stemming from something like the Patriot Act, but it could be something before the Patriot Act, which he can issue at any time, refuse to make public, and do without any person's or body's approval. This should be all over mainstream news, and we know why it's not. We know why it's not, because the mainstream news can only go within the boundaries, and they have special, and I need to do some videos on that, the actual documentation and rules that mainstream media have to follow, so that they are under the guidelines of propaganda that national security needs them to be under, and also Project Mockingbird, and also the heads of most of these news companies are, they're toeing the line, so to speak, of all these agendas and all these agencies involved in, in torture, in murder, in corruption, in human experimentation. Therefore, under the federal statute that secures the right of informed consent for anyone subjected to classified human experimentation, is passed by the legislature and signed into law by the President, the U.S. government has the power to carry out research projects without his consent and without informing the participants of the dangers or future complications. Is the United States carrying out human subject research without consent right now? We don't know, and we do know, actually. This article is saying we don't know. She's trying to kind of stay balanced, balanced and unbiased, but as a targeted individual, as somebody being hit with directed energy weapons, remote neural manipulation, remote neural monitoring, nanoparticulates, and things like that, they are still carrying out experimentation. But speculation about the future of research and experimentation doesn't inspire confidence. So this is where it gets interesting. Jonathan Moreno, a biomedical expert and the author of Undue Risk: Secret State Experiments on Humans, writes, among the next generation of weapons is one that may involve a different sort of radiation than that emitted by atomic fission. Microwaves. Electromagnetic waves may be used to disrupt an enemy soldier's central nervous system, to cause epileptic seizures and do many other things. I added in to do many other things. So let's read that again. I like reading things again so we can understand that. And all targeted individuals and non-targeted individuals, the links are up at the top of the screen, so you can come to these articles and read them for yourself and kind of collect them in an evidence pile. Jonathan Moreno, biomedical expert and author of Undue Risk, Secret State Experiments on Humans, writes, among the next generation of weapons is one that may involve a different sort of radiation than that emitted by atomic fission, microwaves. Electromagnetic waves may be used to disrupt an enemy soldier's central nervous system to cause epileptic seizures. Anyone who doubts that the U.S. military may be considering such research need only consult a 2006 Navy directive that includes guidelines for waiving consent and suggests the potential for research involving severe or unusual intrusion, either physical or psychological, on human subjects, such as consciousness-altering drugs or mind control techniques. And then you connect that with my other videos in neurotechnologies, neuroweapons and neurotechnologies, with mind control techniques. In order to overcome more than 50 years of failed reforms, new approaches to human subject protections for classified experiments need to be developed, and troubling questions need to be answered. How could this have happened and happened for so long? That's what all targeted individuals are asking, or anybody subject to like weird experimentation or weird unusual torture. How could this have happened, and how could it have stayed this way for so long? And that's because of censorship and making it mandatory for the mainstream media not to talk about any of these important issues where our lives are on the line, where our lives and our families are on the line, and instead talk about things that take us away from things that are the utmost important and priority for us as United States citizens and citizens around the world. As we reflect on potential research and consider the ongoing debate regarding torture, the power of the executive branch, and the future of U.S. security, the need for strong, legally binding regulations governing human subject research is undeniable. It's time, with a new administration that condemns torture of any kind, to establish regulations governing all human subject protections in classified experiments, and to ensure that no person, regardless of position, can take away a person's right to consent. Now, in the Constitution, humans, man and woman, have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Doing this lottery system of you can experiment on anyone at any time and torture them and mess up their lives and murder them, in a lot of cases, goes against the Constitution and goes against all the laws already on the books about torture and murder. I also wanted to add in. I want to take a sip of Mountain Dew real quick, and I'm gonna try and just slow down so I can get through this information. I always feel like I have this conditioning from doing phone videos that I've got to just get through. But I did want to say, I have Audible V2K, and sometimes I'll be thinking in my inner voice, this is completely illegal. It's satanic. It's illegal. What y'all are doing is a crime. And then the male's voice on the Voice of Skull will be like, no, this is legal. So this is dangerous, and these rules are dangerous, and the things that they're telling these people who are carrying out this experimentation and targeting is dangerous, because it tends to give these people who are maybe ex-military and conditioned, and what is it? What's the other word for conditioned? But brainwashed into just following orders of whoever's higher up, that this is completely justified and legal. It confuses people when it is not legal. Because if it was completely legal, if non-consensual human experimentation was completely legal in classified research, then why don't they put it out on mainstream media and see if they can keep doing it? They hide these things. They have these little rules as justifications for the contractors and agencies carrying out these atrocities, but they don't tell the public, because if they told the public, there'd be legislation tomorrow to stop all of this. It's the biggest lie, you know, that I've ever known of. The biggest lie that I've ever known. And I was gonna say something else, but I forgot. Okay, now I want to go to the Geneva Convention for relative to the protection of civilian persons in a time of war. So even if you know, our country or other countries declared a war on terrorism and it was a time of war, the Geneva Convention still protects us from experimentation and torture. And the link's up there at the top. I'm probably not going to read the whole thing. I'm going to turn off my phone real quick. I'm probably not going to read the whole thing because it gets a little bit complicated. I guess I will just read through the first section until it gets into the important section, but y'all can all come here and read this. What our intelligence agencies and the DoD, you know, these third-party contractors are doing to target individuals with chemical and biological agents and directed energy intrusion on our bodies, our nervous systems, our mind, goes against the Geneva Convention, these rules that were set up, and against laws that were already made. You can't murder and torture people. So it brings back the point that I made on another one of my videos, that we live in an anarcho-tyranny. And I got that term from Ryan Dawson. He's made a lot of videos on 9/11 and just basically, you know, all the corrupt things that are going on in the world and war by deceit and things like that. But he said we live in an anarcho-tyranny because they make up these little secret rules that the public knows nothing about so that they can do anything they want, while every regular civilian like me, I can't just go and experiment on anybody. So it creating these little rules that the public does not know about, that aren't really even rules, they're kind of just justifications so that they can brainwash people into going along with it. Anarchy, anarcho-tyranny. So Article 32, prohibition of corporal punishment, torture, etc. The principle stated in Article 27 of absolute respect for the human person might have constituted a sufficient guarantee for protected persons in itself. However, the memory of barbaric acts, of which there were only too many examples in the two world wars, showed the need to strengthen this principle and to prohibit expressly all acts contrary to it. It was for that purpose that the 17th International Red Cross Conference in 1948, on the suggestion of the International Committee of the Red Cross, adopted a provision prohibiting torture, corporal punishment, and coercion. Article 32 states a principle common to the four Geneva Convention of 1949. General principles. A. Subject to prohibition. The words "the high contracting parties" at the beginning of this article cover states which by the ratification or accession have accepted the text of the convention. They are of a more general and solemn character than the expression "the parties to the conflict" or "the contracting parties" often used in the text of the convention. They seem therefore to have been used deliberately to emphasize the fundamental nature of the provision. The intervention of the authors of the convention is also clearly shown by the way the prohibition is worded. The high contracting parties specifically agree that each of them is prohibited, which expresses the idea that each contracting party makes a formal pledge in regard to itself and to other states, and that this pledge is equally binding on those under its authority or acting in its name. So I want to go down and just, y'all can come here and read the whole Article 32 of the Geneva Convention. I think we all need to kind of familiarize ourselves with it. But I want to go down to prohibited acts. Prohibited acts under Article 32 of the Geneva Convention. And I want to go to these two really important ones: torture and corporal punishment and mutilation, and medical experiences. We'll go through these three. Um, Torture. A formal distinction may be made between judicial torture to extort confessions and extrajudicial torture. Under both forms, torture is an attack on the human person which infringes fundamental human rights. Judicial torture, although it has been abolished for more than a century in all civilized countries, has reappeared with the racial and political persecutions. The prohibition of torture set forth in this article is absolute. It covers all forms of torture, whether they form part of penal procedure or are quasi or extrajudicial acts. And this targeting is an extrajudicial act. And whatever the means employed, there need not necessarily be any attack on physical integrity, since the progress of science has enabled the use of procedures which, while they involve physical suffering, do not necessarily cause bodily injury. In occupied territory, the use of judicial torture is prohibited even if the penal legislation of the occupied territory provides for it. In such a case, the occupying power under Article 64, Paragraph 1, must repeal such laws. Like murder, torture is one of the acts listed in Article 147 as a grave breach. It is also prohibited by Article 3, common to all four conventions, and Article 12, common to the first two conventions of 1949. Corporal punishment and mutilation. These expressions are sufficiently clear not to need lengthy comment. Like torture, they are covered by the general idea of physical suffering. Mutilation, a particularly reprehensible and heinous form of attack on the human person, is also included in the list of grave breaches and is mentioned formally in Article 147. Among acts willfully causing great suffering or serious injury to body or health. Furthermore, it is expressly forbidden by Article 3 of the Convention. Now, this is the important one. Medical experiments. Well, all these are. Torture and medical experiments are very important because targeting an individual, like targeted individuals are being targeted, is both torture and experimentation. Medical experiments. In prohibiting medical experiments on protected persons, the diplomatic conference wished to abolish forever the criminal practices from which thousands of persons suffered in the death camps of the last World War. The convention, however, refers only to medical or scientific experiments not necessitated by the medical treatment of a protected person. It does not, therefore, prevent doctors using new forms or treatments for medical reasons with the sole object of improving the patient's condition. It must be permissible to use new medications and methods invented by science, provided that they are used only for therapeutic purposes. Protected persons must not in any circumstances be used as guinea pigs for medical experiments. Protected persons must not in any circumstances be used as guinea pigs for medical experiments. Biological experiments are also prohibited by the other three conventions of 1945. And they are listed among the grave breaches in Article 147. And I might go over Article 147 in another video. But you guys can see the link at the top, so you can come here and read the whole thing. And this is important. It's important that we put these things together, show the justifications of intelligence agencies and these contractors of why they think that they can experiment on a completely innocent citizen using neuroweapons, using external microwave torture, using remote neural monitoring, using microbiological agents, chemicals, chemical attacks and things like that to go along, neurotoxins and things like that. And the whole thing about this is, I hear from my attackers a lot on B2K where they're like, we've got to do this. It seems like they are ex-military, maybe Masonic, and they have hooked up with the third-party contractor, and then they're like, hey, this is all justified. We're being told to do this by, pretty much, the third-party contractors connected to the DoD because they're getting defense contracts. So they have a justification in their head that, oh, well, there's a rule that we can do this if it helps our country and it furthers scientific progress. But it goes against the Geneva Convention that America has agreed to be part of, and all these other Five Eye nations have agreed to be part of. So it goes against the Constitution, the Geneva Convention, and laws that we all live by in the public sphere. all civilians and all open military have to live by, even in wartime, even in wartime. And that's why, you know, when you hear about targeted individuals, you're not hearing the truth from the mainstream media. You're really not hearing anything from the mainstream media, because it's this trick of saying, well, this is justified under certain rules, but we dare not tell the public. We dare not tell the public because things would have to change. And that's why awareness is so important. And we need everybody's help, non-TIs, because they know things will change. Once the public gets a hold of something this grotesque, that they're going against the Geneva Convention, they're going against regular laws, they're going against, they're going against the Constitution. That's like the most important thing. Then the public gets outraged, and then legislation has to be enacted that will stop things like this, and that's why they hide it. So it's not legal. It's not legal. It's a deceit. It's a deceit that they are told and brainwashed to make them think it's legal. It's crime. This is crime. And treason. And treason, because our country has agreed to not do these things. Okay, so I'm going to kind of jump around a bit. That's kind of the end of section 1, and then I wanted to do kind of a segment here called Name the Contractor. You know, I want to keep going through contractors in a different one, you know, each video, and just kind of have different sections of the videos of things that I think are important and things that can connect the dots for non-targeted individuals and targeted individuals. I'm going to kind of take just some breaths and just slow down. I have this habit of, just going too fast, because, you know, I'm pretty anxious, like being targeted, and I want to get through the information, but I just want to slow down so we can just go through the information here and get it out. And this video will be kind of hodgepodge. Maybe in later videos, I think I might, start getting into some editing some content. But I just want to go through things that really help me to understand what was happening to me and happening to other targeted individuals that I knew, and people, especially go through, whistleblowers. Like I'm gonna go through some stuff that Richard Lighthouse said today. He didn't say it today, but he said it in interviews, and I want to go through some of that material. Some of that material, that connects dots for me, and it can help us more to understand and kind of we have a baseline. We need to keep building up that baseline of what we all know to be true. And there's a lot of different ways that this is done, and there's, so many different protocols, and I think there's a lot of redundant systems used by the military-industrial complex in this experimentation for delivering directed energy, and also for our bodies to actually receive that directed energy to our nervous system and our brain, and also our skin. But let me go through this. This is just the, and this will be short. Name the contractor. This is the page for Lockheed Martin, and it says New Age defenses. New Age threats require New Age defenses. And then it has the first thing that's, and this is its home page. This is the home page, and it says directed energy right there. For 40 years, Lockheed Martin has researched, designed, developed, and captured electromagnetic energy and elevated its power to create innovative directed energy solutions. We have developed laser weapon systems, radio frequency, and other directed energy technologies for air, ground, and sea platforms to provide an affordable countermeasure alternative. We are addressing critical needs such as accuracy, mobility, size, weight, and power, cooling, and minimal collateral damage. I almost threw up my mouth. So right here they have electro-optic infrared countermeasures. Electro-optic is kind of can be classified as directed energy, focused on providing the most advanced laser-based threat adaptable countermeasure devices to counter all types of surface-to-air and air-to-air, EO/IR, I guess, electro-optic infrared threats, leveraging over 30 years of EO/IRCM development and test experience. And then I kind of wanted to, and you know, the website's at the top, so y'all can just go check out Lockheed Martin and go around the website. This was very interesting to me. This is Joe Sullivan, laser pod systems engineer. Directed energy is basically throwing electro-optical physics at a target, says Joe Sullivan, systems engineer working in directed energy at Lockheed Martin in Orlando, Florida. It's a whole new world, and getting in on the ground floor is about as exciting as it gets for an engineer. And then I'm not going to go through, well, I guess I will. I'll go through his credentials so we can kind of understand the people involved in manufacturing these weapon systems and also using these weapon systems on civilians. Joe started at Lockheed Martin as an analog electronics design engineer on the Canadian Forces Low-Level Air Defense System program and is now a systems engineer developing control solutions for a laser pod development program. He is part of a team exploring and addressing the challenges of operating podded laser systems in a high-speed airborne environment. He thoroughly enjoys the work he does and the company he works for, and he says, "I love to learn. I can't think of a better place to learn than Lockheed Martin. I'm a very fortunate engineer." Well, good for you, Joe. Good for you. Not good for my family, but good for you. Not good for other target individuals. Okay, so that's kind of the middle section, name the contractor, and I'm going to be doing that on a lot of my videos. I'll kind of just stop in the middle if I'm going to kind of change subjects a little bit and name a contractor, and we're just going to go through some of these contractors that are involved in manufacturing and carrying out research and development on these directed energy systems. Now I want to go to something really important and a person who has really advanced my knowledge of all this. I want to see where I start on this. I think it's here. And he says a lot of things that are very important for us all to know. Yeah, and I'll do some comments on it. But really, really go and watch. Richard Lighthouse has an interview with Romola D. It's on Romola D Reports, report number 63. It's a great interview. And then Ella has interviewed him. I think she's interviewed him 3 times. She interviewed him on the podcast from TalkShoe, and then interviewed him on Whistleblower Nation. And I've got some of that. But he says a lot of important things in this interview. It's report number 63. Richard Lighthouse, NASA engineer, discusses satellite weapons, civilian abuse. And this is kind of switching gears from the information about non-consensual human experimentation, but still connecting dots, because he talks about a lot of the delivery mechanisms of this directed energy and how we are being hit. In the most popular forms that they are hitting us. And also, I wanted to mention that I don't really have a problem with just slowing down and relaxing when I'm doing these. So I really want to practice on that, so I can just go through a lot of information and not worry about the time, and kind of do it in a relaxed format. So I'm going to be, tweaking what I'm doing and what information I'm putting out and how. But this is, I'm really excited about this, and I actually, kept putting off making videos, with just my cell phone. I was getting very tired of that, and it seemed like I was just like, I gotta take my cell phone and, try and capture the screen with the cell phone. And I really like this, so I'm gonna be doing a lot of different things, getting a lot of information out, focusing on what I think is the main priority for not only me as a target individual, but other target individuals out there. I know there's this topic is such a vast landscape, and if you're just discussing corruption in the world, it's so many topics. But I kind of want to come from my corner and what I think is the priority threats to targeted individuals, and people suffering from this experimentation. I am going to go over a lot of stuff about gang stalking, and and Citizens Corps, DHS Fusion Center, and InfraGard and things like that. I'm definitely going to be going over a lot of stuff like that because that's a severe, it ties into all this. It ties into the trauma. It ties into discrediting us. But my main focus and priority is the weapons hitting us and hitting our brains and our nervous systems. Because, without that, we could easily challenge gang stalking and do away with it like that. They have to keep us down with these weapons and keep our brains down, and screw us up and mutilate us so that then some retard that maybe lives by you can walk past you and feel good about themselves. They have to rip people down that they're attacking. I didn't even take a drink of this. Okay, so I'm just going to play some. I'm going to play a lot of it. But please come and watch this interview. I'll stop it when he says something important if I feel like I want to add something in. But this is some very, very important information. I'm going to see. Time goes by so fast.
I could show you some diagrams. I know that's not very clear to explain verbally, but so there's some very good diagrams.
And did I apologize? When I'm playing something on the screen, my webcam microphone is picking it up. So I'm sorry about that. So it kind of creates an echo effect. I'm going to try and figure out how to reduce that, but I do want to kind of stop the videos and I have comments. So I kind of want to keep doing that and not just cut off all sound, obviously. But I'm going to try and figure out some better ways to do that. But so just bear with this. I think you can hear it. And I'm going to go back and check the videos and see how bad it is. But here goes.
Diagrams online that would be helpful.
Sure, yeah.
The bottom line is that the Air Force knows everything that is in orbit. They know who launched it, and they know the frequencies that the satellite operates. And if it's got weapons, they also know the signal that it's working at.
That's really
so
interesting.
Our question to these Air Force personnel is, if you want to claim that you don't know who's doing it, then tell us who is, because you've got all that information on a website called spacetrack.org. And it's operated by the military.
That's really fascinating. I think that's sort of breakthrough information, Richard, because you're kind of establishing that the USF was a sort of the prime source to go to for any kind of last word on satellites and the kind of signals that one gets from the direction of satellites, So I'm sure that we can go into that in greater detail, but I have questions also about cell towers and other modalities whereby these signals are being, sent at targets. What is your thinking regarding to what extent are signals, weaponized signals, these pulse shots, which are hitting targets and, causing all sorts of, medical damage and so forth? What is your opinion as to what extent these signals are coming from cell towers, from other kinds of antennas and transmitters, and from satellites, and from, portable dues, other forms and platforms of discharge?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Ramola. I have a tab on the website. It's just listed as technology at targetedjustice.com.
Okay, so in Richard Lighthouse is a former NASA engineer. He worked at NASA, and he knows a lot about the technicalities of satellites and the actual, I don't know a lot about technology, but the actual parts that they put in the satellites to emit microwaves. And in cell phone towers, they have certain devices on cell phone towers that emit that have magnetrons and emit microwaves. But he'll talk about it more. I'm going to play a lot of this, so but I'll try and break in every time that I hear something really important.
And I've identified 5 primary weaponized systems that are primarily operated by the U.S. Air Force out of Schriever Air Force Base. And I can go into I won't go into the details of how we can deduce that, but these systems are synchronized, and the main thing that is required is the precise GPS coordinates. And again, that goes back to the Air Force bragging that they're the sole provider of that information. And so that precise GPS coordinate can be sent at the speed of light to anywhere in the world and be told, hey, there's a cell tower that's close to this person, hit him. There's a drone that's flying above Houston, Texas. Here's the GPS coordinates we want you to hit right now. Push the button. And all of that is easily synchronized. Once you have the key piece of information that is necessary is the GPS coordinates, the navigation, and the timing that's necessary.
So location, navigation, and timing. GPS coordinates, navigation, and timing. Those are the things that are required to target somebody with directed energy microwaves, directed energy.
To run that system, and a network of satellites that can relay it at the speed of light. And the only organization in the world that has that capability is Air Force Space Command.
So again, it comes back to U.S. Air Force Space Command because it makes, satellites integral to this operation of targeting.
That's correct. Without the satellite GPS coordinates, these systems would not function nearly as well, and possibly not at all. They certainly couldn't be as accurate as they are.
Does it also bring up the question of implantation and RFID chips embedded in the bodies of targets to provide accurate GPS tracking?
That's another good question. It appears that up until a few years ago, and I'll quote Dr. John Hall, and he has certainly interviewed far more people than I have spoken to, but in his opinion, up to maybe 10 years ago, most of these people were tracked using implants. And about that time, they got a computer system set up and synchronized and networked out of Schriever Air Force Base such that it could aggregate the data of tens of thousands of people at the same time.
Thousands of people at the same time.
And the reason we know that is there's a very short video by a medical doctor named Dr. Bill Deagle, D-E-A-G-L-E.
And he's saying a primary location for satellites that can GPS, like the location of this many people at one time, is Schriever Air Force Base. Now I think there's some other locations and everything, but this is really important what he says right here.
And he is actually, I believe he still lives in Colorado, but back in 1994, he was actually a medical doctor at Schriever Air Force Base soon after it opened. So it opened, it was fully operational in 1992, and he was there in 94. And if you watch this 5-minute video, he will tell you how impressed he was with the massive underground city that is the complex underneath Schriever.
GPS tracking.
I need to listen to that guy's name again. I interrupted.
That's another good question. It appears that up until a few years ago, and I'll quote Dr. John Hall, and he has certainly interviewed far more people than I have spoken to, but in his opinion, up to maybe 10 years ago, most of these people were tracked using implants. And about that time, they got a computer system set up and synchronized and networked out of Schriever Air Force Base such that it could aggregate the data of tens of thousands of people at the same time. And the reason we know that is there's a very short video by a medical doctor named Dr. Bill Deagle, D-E-A-G-L-E. And he is actually, I believe he still lives in Colorado, but back in 1994, he was actually a medical doctor at Schriever Air Force Base soon after it opened. So it opened, it was fully operational in 1992, and he was there in 94. And if you watch this 5-minute video, he will tell you how impressed he was with the massive underground city that is the complex underneath Schriever and Peterson Air Force Base. And he repeated, he said, it is very impressive. They have an entire city of technology, a quarter of a mile underground, and they have the world's fastest computer system. And this was in 1994. They already had quantum computing, something that IBM is trying to produce right now. According to Dr. Deagle, they had the more computer power at Schriever Air Force Base than the entire rest of the world combined. Think about that.
That is pretty amazing. You know, there's so much information coming out about what's underneath these military bases and such. So, you know, that's extraordinary information, I think. There's so much information on your website on targeted justice that I'm just...
Okay, I think I'm going to go through a little bit more of what he's talking about here. Let me see, 39, 36. Okay, yeah, a little bit more here. Wait. 39, 36, what's this? So we're almost at the next part. Maybe a couple more minutes. And I wanted to say something about that. Oh man, I had something that I really wanted to say about that, and I completely forgot it. Okay, let me play a little bit more, maybe I can remember.
Kind of showing it on the screen right now. It's not showing on my screen, I know, but it's sort of sitting side by side with this window. It will be recorded. I just can't click on all of the links because...
Okay, yeah, and he's going to talk a little bit more about this, and I remember, this is kind of cool, I can play videos while I try and remember what my attackers just mind-wiped me of. But I wanted to say that, you know, my theory and my research kind of points to, you know, places like Schriever Air Force Base and Air Force Naval Command. They have these satellites that can GPS people. Now, these third-party contractors somehow have clearances to tap into those satellites to do this experimentation. Like the third-party contractor would have the remote platform that they're experimenting on the targeted individual, torturing the targeted individual, and then they would have certain codes that they could access these satellites, these microwave satellites, or, you know, there's all kinds of different satellites. The GPSing satellite they may be using to just get location, and then also have the harm satellite, or the one that's hitting with microwaves. But I think that that's kind of the relationship. I in my research and just common sense, I do not think that current military are carrying out these experiments and torture on U.S. citizens. I think that it's ex-military, maybe ex-law enforcement, ex-private investigators, ex-agency workers that then go and connect with these third-party contractors that are awarded, you know, $1 million contracts from the DoD, but then they have access to current military satellites, like the satellites that are run at Schriever Air Force Base. That's kind of how I think it works. Please comment, you know, and that's only one little piece of the pie, I guess, because there are other people involved in this. But that's my thoughts on that. But please comment, and this is just kind of laying groundwork for, okay, how does this stuff all work? How does it all interconnect? Because it's complicated. It's silos of different people, and you'll hear him say it later. Let's go a few more minutes on this and see. I don't remember if he says anything else.
All the links are not showing.
This whole thing is really important.
I did show the images of a protest at Schriever Air Force Base that I think some of you were attendant at recently, right?
That is correct, and we're not the first ones to figure out some of the illegal programs going on at Schriever Air Force Base under the guise of national security. It appears that the CIA is funding these and keeping the lid on it. We've also determined that there are a large number of suicides that could more properly be categorized as murders, and this appears to be how they're keeping the lid on things at Schriever Air Force Base. There's a good website called militarycorruption.com, which tracks an unusual number of what appear to be staged suicides associated with military activity in Colorado Springs.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop that one and go to the next kind of segment here. Yeah, let's listen to this.
Really compelling information that Targeted Justice has been able to bring forward also has to do with the FBI cover-up of the terrorist watch list and the corruption involved with that program. And of course that involves FBI, CIA, Department of Homeland Security, Defense Intelligence Agency, just a number of these intelligence agencies are all involved in what is clearly a cover-up of the true purpose of the terrorist watch list. It is the hiding place where they are controlling the names and information of targeted individuals, and that's very clear. The ACLU did a groundbreaking lawsuit in about 2009, and this was based on the repeated efforts being denied to get Freedom of Information Act requests put through about the terrorist watch list. They ended up filing a lawsuit and were able to pull 13,000 pages of records that were previously unreleasable, clearly specifying the secrecy and the ridiculous contradictions that are contained under the watch list program. For example, and there was a number of lawsuits that segue to that, and we've been able to provide links to those. There was an attorney representing a Muslim gentleman who was denied re-entry into the country, even though he was a full U.S. citizen. He's being told, no, you're Muslim, you're not getting back in. And fortunately, his family had the resources and the funds to file an aggressive lawsuit, and it made it very clear. And I think in the words of the attorney, it was, people need to understand that the FBI is placing people on the terror watch list that they have decided not to investigate.
That's very important. The FBI is placing people on a terrorist watch list that they decide not to investigate. Now, why would they do that? I mean, he kind of talks about this afterwards, but let's just listen. Let's just let him, because he's going to explain basically what my editorialization was.
And they are put under the heading non-investigative subjects. Why would you put someone on a list that you decided not to investigate? That takes some explaining.
Yes.
So that is ongoing. There are now more than 3 million names on the terror watch list, and we have put information on the website identifying the terminology that's used for the watch list and used to inform police officers, sheriffs, constables, deputies, to contact the FBI, and the first thing they'll tell you is don't interfere with this. Do not detain this person. Don't interfere. We'll take it from here. And particularly, they're using this designation to deny emergency assistance and emergency calls to targeted individuals.
Or
that
any,
is also one of
any kind of police help, right?
that is correct. This is the method. This is the mechanism they're using to figure out that you're a TI and the ambulance is not going to respond in a timely manner. The police are not going to show up. They're not going to investigate when you file a criminal complaint. They're not going to follow through. And they're getting that direction from the FBI. And by the way, almost all police chiefs, certainly in major cities in the United States, are trained by, guess who? The FBI.
The FBI. This is what Gerald Sosby relates as well.
So that's really important, and that's like one piece of the pie on how we're not getting police help, and how this is mandated down the pyramid, so that if a policeman, law enforcement comes across this situation, that they are mandated to hand it over to the FBI, and the FBI says we'll take it from here. And that's why, we don't have a lot of police, looking into this and investigating it, because they've set up a system. They've set up, like Dr. Lighthouse says, I don't know if he's a doctor, but Richard Lighthouse says that it's mechanisms to keep this all locked down, to compartmentalize it and keep it siloed. And that's how conspiracies happen. They happen in this compartmentalized way, where a lot of people maybe don't know the full story. They're mandated to hand it over to the FBI if it's a certain person, and the FBI just take it from there. So, let's see, 4620. Let's play a little bit more of it. It's a great interview. Please go watch it in its entirety. But I just wanted to take some excerpts of it that connected dots for me. Some of the most important stuff is coming up, but I want to play a little bit more of this.
That is correct. So the handling code that they use for TIs is called handling code 4, or silent hit. Now what that means is when an officer pulls you over and he takes out your, he says, "I'd like to see your driver's license," he sends that information back into the police department, and the first thing they have been ordered over and over to do, the first thing you do is check the watch list. And they will check the watch list, and what comes back is a silent hit. And that means the police officer will be told, this person is on the terror watch list. The FBI will take it from here. Do not detain them, do not ticket them, and do not help them, regardless of the situation. Contact the FBI, we'll take it from here. And I have heard so many cases that corroborate this from TIs. This is clearly the mechanism, this is clearly the method of handling them. It's a silent hit, which means you will be given no information other than this person's name is on the watch list, and the FBI will take it from here. Mm-hmm. And this is the method and the means they use to prevent them from getting emergency help, to prevent them from filing criminal reports, to prevent the police from investigating it.
This is
okay. Let's go to the next one here. And I think that I can't remember. I think this is where he goes into. This is kind of towards the end. Did I miss one? I think I may have missed one. Let's see. No, I guess not. Yeah, all this information, I might play this almost till the end of the interview. This is really, really important information that he says the most popular ways that we as target individuals are being hit with this stuff.
That's a good segue, Romola. I started to kind of dig into the different the 5 different technologies that are being used with these microwave weapons. The first one is the smart meter in your house, if you have one. A remote signal can be sent to that smart meter that will basically vibrate or send through all the electrical wires in your house. So the wires in your house act like a massive antenna, and you're surrounded with this attack signal.
Wow.
I have seen that. The other methods that are using are the satellites. Mm-hmm. The satellite weapon is called a vercator. Again, it was invented by Donald J. Sullivan at a research lab outside of Albuquerque. That information is available on our website. Mm-hmm. The cell towers are also where the majority of the attacks come from in urban areas. They actually come from cell towers. And I want to encourage folks that think that their neighbor is the one where the signal is originating from. It's highly unlikely that that's the case. We've got a lot of evidence to suggest that it's all coming from cell towers, and it's very easily to dupe somebody because they're simply not aware that a microwave beam can travel through 20 or 30 houses, right through the walls, and then hit somebody. But that technology exists. It's coming from cell towers. They're using what are called a magnetron, a high-powered magnetron. It's like a more powerful version of the magnetron that's used in your microwave oven. In fact, most of them operate at a frequency that's only slightly different from your microwave oven. The typical frequency from these cell towers is either 2400 megahertz or 2550 megahertz. And your microwave oven typically operates at 2450 megahertz. So what they're doing is taking a standard high-powered magnetron design and altering it just enough to take it off of the frequency that affects water molecules. So it travels further in the atmosphere. That's basically what they're doing. in my ebook, or where I described targeted individuals in cell towers, there's a lot of information. I describe which metal enclosures on the cell tower actually hold the magnetron. I've described that they get very hot and that you can use an infrared thermal camera to identify where the magnetron is, because it gets extremely hot when it's...
Okay, and that's something that I'm going to be working on. I do have a little digicam, a DV cam that has infrared on it, has infrared sight on it, and I might be going around to some of the cell towers in my area, you know, and seeing if it can capture the encasements getting hot on there, so that I can then identify which ones are actually relaying microwave, that are actually relaying directed energy. That's going to be a project that I'm going to do coming up soon. I just got to get a battery for the camera, so I lost the battery for it. But
pumping out these pulses of microwaves. So an infrared camera will pick it up like a hotspot, and you can clear it. It's very easy for you to tell where it is. And generally there's even more than one. So that's helpful information. The drones are another source. Again, they're using high-powered magnetrons. The drones of choice that they're using at the Air Force is called an MQ-9 Reaper. It's a variation of the MQ-1 Predator that was used in the Middle East. The reason they're using these is because the payload capacity of these drones is about 400 pounds, and it takes anywhere from, it takes typically 30 to 60 pounds minimum to put onto one of these drones to power a high-power magnetron. So these little lightweight drones that you see people flying in the backyard and that the FBI may be using for surveillance, they don't have the payload capability to carry a high-powered magnetron. Plus the battery system and the electrical charging system, it simply weighs too much. There's really only 2 aircraft that they're using for the drone attacks using high-powered magnetrons. It's the MQ-9, and here in Houston they fly those out of Ellington Air Force Base. They've got a hangar where they're parked. They can loiter these drones for up to 24 hours at a time over the city and just select their targets and hit whoever they want.
I think they're doing it here too in the Boston area. Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay.
You know,
there's probably an Air Force Base close by, and you can even Google up and pull up side views, and you will find that those MQ-9s or MQ-1s are parked in the hangar, and that's where they're launching them from.
Very interesting. So one could conceivably do a FOIA request about these MQ-9s and find out more about them?
I would encourage you to try to do a FOIA request, but I'm guessing you're going to get that's national security.
Oh, okay. Like some of it might be redacted or classified.
Or redacted. Something you could do is distribute flyers on the personnel vehicles for the people that are parked next to the hangar, and let them know about targeted justice and the fact that you know that those aircraft are being used against civilians.
Ah, that's brilliant. Because you're saying people don't know.
As Richard Hoagland says, the lie is different at every level. So the pilots that are flying those aircraft and the men and women that are supporting them are being told something completely different. They're being told that they're surveilling terrorists, or they're surveilling, some kind of a military
criminal activity or something like that.
That's not what's happening. So when we get that information to them, that hey, your drone aircraft are being targeting civilians. Look at this. We've got the proof right here. Look it up. That's information that's not available to these people because they're being lied to. So if you're aware that drone aircraft such as the MQ-9 and the Army uses, Army personnel use a different drone. It's called the RQ-7. And they do their training at Fort Huachuca in southern Arizona. They've got the largest drone training base in southern Arizona. They train
Fort Huachuca. And I know, guys, that it's kind of like, okay, we're just watching a YouTube video that you could watch on your own. With Richard Lighthouse, though, he's very straightforward in what he says. So I don't really have to do a ton of commentary on what he's saying, this is just really important information because, I mean, he's worked at NASA, he understands how satellite works and how directed energy flows, and so this is just super important information just to mirror. Romola did a great interview with him. I'm going to kind of go into to an interview that Ella did with him to also bring it to something he says. Well, I'll get into that later. I do kind of just want to play this for a couple more minutes. I probably won't play it till the end because I know it may annoy some of you guys. You're like, why are we just watching a YouTube video? We can just go watch this on our own. But I like to just play the important parts that have put the pieces together for me and help us to gain a better understanding. You know, keep building that foundation of knowledge that we can all have, and then keep building it up, building it up, building it up.
Several thousand people a year, including people from foreign nations that are military. But it's clear that, you know, when it's military people from Italy and they're training them how to use these drones, they're not, those military personnel in Italy are not flying military missions into the Middle East. It's clear that those people are being trained to attack civilians. There's no other rational explanation why the Italian military would want a slew of drones and train their people on how to use them. There's only one rational explanation. They're using those against civilians.
That's a really important point. Like, I mean, and I think the United States is helping other countries, you know, with technologies like this. You know, their intelligence agencies in their form of the Air Force and things like that, and then they have international. There are some contractors that operate within the United States of America and then other countries too, and so it's like America's helping some of those countries to actually do some of this experimentation and you know, and torture, and, you know, I guess you could say advancement of targeting techniques and GPSing people and stuff like that. They're helping other countries to do this, to get them off the ground, you know, murdering their own citizens, torturing and experimenting on their own citizens. This is serious shit. This is serious shit. I think we'll listen to a couple more minutes here. I think he had some other really important stuff towards the end here.
And the U.S. military is training them on how to do it.
That is correct. At Fort Huachuca in southern Arizona, look it up. I encourage people to look it up. I always encourage people not to take my word. Do your own research. I've given you some tips and hints on what to look for. Do your own research. I want people to fully believe and get their arms around this, and I think the best way to do that is do your own research.
Interesting. You know, I had one question. You mentioned that it's not neighbors, it's satellites, and people don't know that they're actually penetrating through houses and so forth and so on. Many people report kind of, you know, some people do have recording instruments which show the direction from which these hits are coming. And they seem to come from the direction of the neighbors' houses, and they sometimes seem to come from a kind of a horizontal angle, not so much from a vertical or oblique angle, kind of pointing, you know, upward. So is there an explanation for that, for, you know, that kind of horizontal hit?
That's an excellent point. I'm glad you brought that up, Romola. I need to publish some information on this.
Okay.
And I'm going to try to explain this verbally, but I want people to try to imagine this. So let's say if you're a TI and you're getting hit in the side of your head, it's very important for you to be aware of where you're getting hit. A lot of TIs just say they experience nausea or discomfort or pain in their head, and they don't make an attempt to figure out exactly where is it coming from.
Okay, so he gives a technique right here to kind of establish what direction it's coming from. I have a stream of energy hitting this right side of my head right now. I feel the heat, it's hitting my head. So listen to what he says, and I'm going to kind of be doing it while he's describing it, and it actually works. Like, this actually
where
does
they're being
work.
hit. It's very important to first ascertain where are you being hit. And if it's on the right side of your head, take your right hand and hold your right hand out at an arm's length with your palm facing you. Okay, can you picture that?
Okay,
and
with your
move
palm facing you, all right, right face, yeah.
facing you, hold it out at arm's length, and
feel it in
move
my
your hand
knuckles
back and
coming
forth,
from that
kind of
way,
in an up and down and back
that
and
way
forth
out,
method.
almost
Oh.
And what
directly
you'll
line of
notice
sight to that
is when the
cell tower
microwave
right now.
pulse will hit your finger joints.
Oh,
You'll
I
feel
see.
pop.
Over on this
You'll
side of
feel
my
pop
fingers.
in your finger joints.
Interesting.
And if you take sort of the direction from your
Like a
head
tingly
through
pop
that point in
in
your
the
fingers, it will point to a cell tower. Okay, does that make sense?
I see. Yeah,
And it's-
definitely.
Encourage everyone to try this. It's so easy to do, and it will help you identify the specific
But I'm being hit
direction
like this.
where the cell. It's usually a cell tower. Now, occasionally it'll be a drone, and the way to pick out a drone is it's coming from a distinct 45-degree angle upward. Okay, the satellites are generally, and again, there's going to be exceptions to this, but these are just the general rules of thumb. If it's straight overhead, that's generally a satellite. If it's at a 45-degree angle
I
overhead,
get a lot
that's
of hits
generally a
going
drone.
straight down
If
on
it's
my head, and I'm
straight
wondering if that's
horizontal
straight
from you, it's coming from a cell tower that's one, maybe even 2 miles away, but it's penetrating your walls and the neighbor's house, and you're being duped into thinking that it's your neighbor. It's not your neighbor. It's coming from a cell tower. Almost all of these cell towers have been weaponized with these magnetrons.
Interesting. And what about the hits that appear to be coming from underneath, or from the side is what you're saying. It's still coming from a cell tower, but sometimes for instance, I'm sitting upstairs right now and I'm hit from below. So I could be hit from cars, on the street, I imagine, with a portable dew, or from my neighbor's house with a portable dew. But where are the hits coming from?
Okay.
When they're making a they're making a racket too on the shielding that I'm sitting on.
Okay, this is an excellent discussion for people to have. The way to determine where it's coming is called triangulation. So the way you want to do that is you want to get in distant points within your house. For example, the farthest northern point in your house and the farthest southern point in your house, and use that hand technique that I described. And those lines will intersect. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If it's truly coming from your neighbor's house, those two lines that you're drawing between your head and your arm, if, for example, that's what you're doing, and then if you go upstairs and draw a third line by picking it out, draw a little map or print out a Google map of your home from above, and draw those angles on that map and look where they intersect. That will tell you exactly where that microwave pulse is coming from.
I see.
Does that make sense? It's called triangulation.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay guys, I'm going to kind of stop that video, but please go watch it in its entirety. It's a great interview. And then Ella interviewed him on August 1st, 2017, and this is really important because this I talked to y'all a lot about Dave Case's CD, and actually before I show you all this, I'm going to pull up that website. I'm going to pull up anti-tinnitus. I'm going to pull up his website where you can go to actually get Dave Case's CD. And then I want you to listen to what Richard Lighthouse says here, and this is like a scientific proof of why Dave Case's CD works. I guess it's pulling it up right now. There we go. But listen to this.
So back to a little more of the technical information.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's literally two signals. The tracking signal that's used is basically a bunch of, if you look at that ebook again, it's called, one is called Targeted Individuals Technical Information, and that's a rather large ebook that has introductory information. And
so he has ebooks online. I think you can go to Targeted Justice and find links to his ebooks. If somebody does have those and wants to throw them in the comments, please do. But he does have some great ebooks on kind of some simplified technical aspects of this. Right now on this, he's talking about a tracking signal and then a harm signal. So we have like a microwave directed energy coming to us to track us, and then we also have another stream of energy to harm us. But let him explain it.
And then I have another book called 34 Patents on Subliminal Mind Control, where I document how this technology has been developed for many years. And then a third book called The Microwave Torture of Ed Snowden and Julian Assange. And of course, neither one of these individuals have come out publicly stating...
Okay, that's right there. I want to stop it. He's talking about the microwave torture of Edward Snowden and Julian Assange. And this is a very interesting kind of side note. Please go out and watch the movie Snowden. It was by Oliver Stone, and it's very, very interesting. And because I was being targeted when I saw that movie, and there's two parts in the movies where he collapses from seizures, like he's having seizures. Before he collapses, in one part in the movie, he's in the kitchen and he's cooking noodles to make spaghetti, and the steam fills up his glasses, and there's heat. There's a lot of heat, and then he collapses. Then the second time that he collapses from a seizure, he's out by a fire. They're out at the beach and they have a fire. I think they're barbecuing and stuff like that. And before he collapses with a seizure, it has the camera, and then you know how fire kind of distorts the air. The heat distorts the air. It has that right before he collapses from a seizure. So I think Oliver Stone was kind of hinting at him being hit with microwave torture. I'm not 100% on this, but it's an interesting side note. And Richard Lighthouse is saying that Edward Snowden and Julian Assange are both being attacked. Both have microwave torture and probably remote neural monitoring, as well as remote neural manipulation. And I before I was researching Snowden, and then I went and watched that, and then I went and saw that movie. I was being heavily targeted while I saw the movie, and I really noticed those two parts in the movie where Oliver Stone metaphorically put tons of heat each time he collapsed from the seizures that he did have. Oh God, this Facebook crap. I don't know if I'm gonna have to take Facebook off my computer. I'm getting sick of getting these everything that people chat about in the groups that I'm in. It pops up on the computer while I'm doing these videos. It's driving me nuts. Okay, but let's listen to them further.
That they're being subjected to this illegal CIA program. But it is my hope and expectation that eventually they will. I think it would be very helpful to many people if they made a public support announcement similar to what William Denny and Kirk Levy had done. But let me quickly shift gears and talk about how to jam a signal electronically. A signal can be jammed electronically by simulating the reflected signal so that the received signal is confused.
Okay, so that's really important. He's saying a signal can be jammed if you have a similar frequency so that when a frequency comes in, it gets confused. The two frequencies meet. Now Dave Case's CD, there's a carrier frequency that I think is a little bit more general with what we're being hit. I think the embedded signals may be a little bit more unique, matching our unique brainwaves. This is a theory that I have, but if you with Dave Case's CD, you're putting on the headphones, and he has isolated those frequencies that are on the carrier frequencies to cause the high-pitched tinnitus-like sound. Mostly he's isolated that frequency, but it also encompasses frequencies that they're using for remote neural manipulation. So when you have those similar frequencies to those carrier frequencies that are coming in a bidirectional stream of energy, it's confusing their systems. So they're getting weaker signals back, and then they can send weaker signals to the brain and the nervous system. That's why Dave Case's CD, and it does not work 100% for me, my attackers have kind of adapted to it in certain ways over a 3-year period, but at first everything was gone. Like the high-pitched nice-like sound was gone, all the remote neural manipulations, it just stamped it out, cut it off. And then they found ways to kind of adapt to it and really work when I wasn't listening to the CD. But that's why that CD works. It actually has a scientific proof of why it confuses these systems that are hitting us. But let's listen to a little bit more of what he says.
Let me try to explain that in a different way so folks understand. If you let's say I have a laser pointer that you might typically use in a classroom on a chalkboard, and I'm standing at the back of the classroom, and I'm pointing this laser at the board, and somebody wants to confuse what's going on, they could get a multi-sided mirror that went in many different directions and hold it up so that once that laser started hitting it, it would just go off in different directions. That's kind of the idea behind jamming a signal electronically, is that the light doesn't get back to the source, so the source doesn't know exactly what they're hitting or what's being targeted. So the basic idea of jamming a signal is to send out another signal that's very similar to the one that's being sent, so that the receiver confuses the location of the signal that was actually sent. Okay? How that's done technically is I've given the location of these two tracking, the tracking signal and the harm signal. And by the way, on the FCC frequency spectrum table, both of these signals are officially identified by the Federal Communications Commission. Both of those frequency bands are identified by the FCC as off limits to everything except satellite-to-ground communications. Let me say that again. The FCC has published documents that are available to anyone online that will clearly state any signal in this range can only come from a satellite in orbit to the Earth on the ground. And that's precisely what both of these signals that I just described are doing. So basically, the FCC has confirmed that these frequencies are used by satellite and nobody else is supposed to be using it, okay, in the United States, okay? So I encourage folks that are interested to look that up, FCC frequency spectrum table. Jamming a signal. In the ebook that I provided, The Microwave Torture of Ed Snowden and Julian Assange, I identify by model number a piece of electronic equipment that can be used to jam these frequency signals. And I am simply giving one example. It's just one example again. And the device that's used is called a signal generator.
Signal generator. I'm going to check that out and see how much it is, because jammers are usually pretty expensive, but jamming these signals is a good way to do it. So I'm going to be checking that out. In Dave Case's CD, the frequencies are just right by the places that they're trying to hit. And they're trying to hit the head and everything. Conduct signals, like they'll hit me in the upper neck, and then my skin is conducting it along to my ear nerves. I think there's other ways where it goes straight through to nanotechnology on neurons. Now that, I think that when you're playing Dave Case's CD, those frequencies are kind of going, in this area, so that some of the other methods that they're using, to get those frequencies affecting the brain and the nervous system are also interrupted. Let's listen. I've listened to a little bit more, and then I'm going to close it out. I know this video was just us watching YouTube videos a little bit, but I'm kind of tired today, and usually he's very straightforward, so I don't really need to add on a lot to what he's saying.
And the method for jamming a signal is called sweeping. Okay, if you think of a broom sweeping back and forth, that's what this signal generator can do with the signal to jam this frequency spectrum between about 3,500 megahertz and 4,000 megahertz. So I can take one of these electronic boxes called a signal generator and tell it to sweep back and forth as fast as it can between 3,500 and 4,000 megahertz, and it will effectively jam that signal. the satellite will not know the correct location, and it will not know where to target the tracking and location or the harm signal, okay? Now, once you've got that, you could expect what the government criminals are going to do next. They're going to try to use what's called a countermeasure or a countermeasure to either damage or sabotage that signal generator. And it gets more complicated. It's basically a military tactic. So if you acquire a piece of equipment that can generate a signal in the frequency range that I've given and sweep that signal back and forth, what you'll want to do is don't turn it on until you need it. And before you do that, you want to do what's called saving the firmware. You want to save all the software that's on that device before you turn it on and use it, okay? And you want to save that on a device that cannot be deleted. You want to put the right protection on. Like if you're using a USB thumb drive or an SD card, you want to switch it so that the device can't be written on top of. And you want to make multiple backup copies of it, okay? So I'm giving you some of the details that are involved so you get a sense of what can be done to jam these signals, okay?
Okay, guys, I'm gonna go ahead and end it there. I'm gonna check into that jammer that he's talking about, and if you guys check into it too, you know, leave something in the comments or send me an email at vulcanwolverine@gmail.com. I kind of want to maybe price some of those jammers, and we may need to check them out. But it makes a lot of sense. You know, why my attackers try and disable my CD player when I play Dave Case's CD. I mean, they're just using countermeasures. You know, they're using countermeasures for something that does jam that signal coming into my head. So then they use the countermeasure of trying to destroy the electronics which are producing that counter signal. But alright guys, I hope some of this information helped. Let's just keep building up documentation and putting it out there. I'm going to make a whole lot more videos. I really like this format, and it's really working out. So way more information to come. I do want to kind of, let's see, what was that? Oh, those are those 17 companies. And then this is Dave Case's website. To get his CD, you just got to pay for shipping and handling, and you can get that anti-tinnitus V2K. It's http://anti-tinnitusv2k.com. And it does, like, I don't have to deal with the tinnitus-like sound anymore. Like, I kind of hear it right now, but it sounds like it's way off in the distance, and it's not like pounding in my head like it was for many years until I got the CD. Now, if I don't listen to it for like 2 days, that they can increase that tinnitus-like sound to where it does hurt my head and it stings a lot. They still do they get through with some remote neural manipulation, but if I listen to that CD every night when I sleep, the pain that they can create with the remote neural manipulation is a lot less. Alright guys, I'm going to go ahead, so go to this website if you want to find out about Dave Case's CD and get one. Way more videos to come. You know, I'm going to be making a lot of them. You know, please send suggestions to me by email if you think something's really important, like you have documentation or an article that you think everybody needs to hear about, and let's just keep getting this information out. I'll just be making a bunch of these videos, and so I'm sorry about the echo effect. I'm going to try and work on that with stuff that I'm going to play on the computer, but I'll be looking for some other you know, other dots that we need to connect, and people just coming out and talking about this technology and using it, so that a lot more non-targeted individuals, or not people who are not being directly targeted with these frequencies, because we all kind of are from our computer, our iPhone, from cell towers and everything like that. But you know, just we'll keep building awareness and building that foundation of awareness. And I ask again for anybody in, I guess we can just call it the real news of the world, things that are really important to people, because a lot of important things are just being suppressed. They're being suppressed, and then there's a lot of propaganda in mainstream media. If you do that service for your fellow man and woman on YouTube and Twitter and Facebook and whatever other social media platforms, please pick this topic up. This is corruption, and it fits into a lot of the other major corruption and the trying to control society from a kind of a pyramidal structure all the way up, to gain power and to gain knowledge and to hide it from the people and to use it on the people to control them more, and to stay in power is what's happening. But all right, guys, I love you guys. I hope you are surviving out there. Let's just keep putting out information. T-Day is August 29th. It's coming up soon. We have 8 days. And I'll be doing a big video that day, or I'll be going and handing out flyers and trying to get some of that. I'd have to do it with my iPhone. Well, I'm going to be doing something on T-Day, and I hope that every other target individual that can is, and I wish everybody well in whatever kind of activism that they're doing, and I'll talk more about that. I think that people have already kind of got set up with what they're going to do set up. So, all right, guys, I'll definitely see you on the next one, and a lot more to come.